I haven't been considering, and I've been screwing up, I think, is I've just been placing these without any regard to the order that they're in. The top one goes first. So the Connecticut Valley probably would have liked to have gone before the CV. Does it actually matter? Probably not. I'm sorry, before the BL. Probably not. They're far separated. Let's look at some of the others. The Minnehaha and the WNR heading in different directions. The NLN and the Poughkeepsie heading in different directions. So they're probably not going to be competing, at least not right away. There's some possibility of connection between them. But I ought to keep that in mind and grab the top space rather than the bottom space like I've been doing. Just OCD has been on that. Okay, so here I am with 18 New England, about ready to start. I've dealt out the starting money. We're going to start with priority here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. I pulled the starting tokens out and gotten the minor companies to go with them. I'm leaving them on the board to help me make decisions. Now, in terms of decision making, I think the easiest thing to do is, if you want to get a corporation started, which maybe you do, maybe you don't, is to start in one of the cities where there's multiple things coming up. Well, the most interesting is New Haven here. The cheapest value is $50, so all I need is $100 to be able to pick something. And I am going to choose the HNH. And again, I'm going to leave those tokens out there for now, but I'm going to choose that as a reserved company. I'll leave the tokens on the board. That'll indicate it's reserved. Later, we'll shift things and put money in whatever. But I don't have to pay anything yet. That's my one choice. Second player. So, second player is not very thrilled in a lot of ways. Like the last player would get to pick 2 in a double and reserve them both. And that would all be great and everything. HNH, the reason I took it is it breaks me up into Hartford, Springfield. H is so if we look at the value of locations, New Haven is very valuable. H is the next most valuable. Boston is the most valuable, though. So perhaps taking a Boston rail and preventing someone from getting the double Boston move seems like a good idea. So I will go and reserve the Boston and Lowell here. We'll probably shift the money on top of those, just above them, not on top, like this, just because I think that'll differentiate more easily. It gets me to the third player. I can just pass and hold my money and not make anything all game, because if you don't have a minor, you can't do anything, basically, right? Like a lot of these games, I'm thinking like 1835, which also has sort of a drafting type system of a different sort. But 1835 is like, yeah, you're not going to win without your minors, right? 2038 is another one with minors that are really important. You're not going to win without your minors, but you could at least engage in the game. In fact, there are ways to do cool stuff without minors if you just do privates there, but there are no privates in this either. Okay, so third player is looking at things and saying, I got this kind of cutoff thing here. It does go up to Portland. It's not terrible, but Albany's a Y. What do Y's turn into? Y's turn into slightly better than Browns. Not as good as Boston or New Haven. And I mean, eventually I'll be able to get out of Boston or New Haven. at my option. I feel like we need to die here. And you know, it's kind of funny. Like most games, the minors have a price that's set on them that you have to pay. Here, you get to set your price to wherever you kind of feel most inclined. And in fact, the last player could, if he really wanted to start at 70 or really wanted to start at 50 or whatever, he could set his price instead of taking two companies, which might be more valuable. I don't know what prices are worth making though, right? I don't know what kind of income we're going to make. The miners are going to pay 50-50, as they always do. Well, Poughkeepsie gets me to New York the fastest. New York is a really nice payoff. I'm going to take Poughkeepsie because it's near where I lived for a long time. But also because I think it's kind of an underdog situation. It's so obvious you want those big guys. Got them in here. I'm going to take the Poughkeepsie Railroad and just reserve that. I gotta swap batteries. I'll keep thinking. What I've learned about XX games is sometimes being not in a particularly great starting spot, although you want a token in those big cities eventually, can be valuable. So I think this guy's going to grab Worcester. All right. That puts it on the final player. He's going to grab the two remaining New Haven railroads with the idea of, hey, easy merger, good location. I get the Minnehaha, which is a major, it's a big corporation. It's funny. The NYNH is a corporation in 1830. The Delaware and Hudson is a corporation here. It's a private company, which is weaker than a minor. So I'm going to take that, and I'm going to take the New London. And I just claim them. That means the guy with Worcester has a few choices. I have enough money to buy two, which to me means I want to buy two, if I can. But will I get two? See, that's the issue here. So let's say this guy was just, had too much of a boner for being able to get a double, right? I only have 280 bucks. If I grab one of these could cost me 140 each. I can buy two no matter what. So no matter what price they come out as, I can buy two. So that's appealing. There's some possible synergy here. It doesn't feel like the brightest thing to take. But ER looks so blocked off over there. Of course, this thing is also kind of... This thing's not really blocked off because it actually starts off with track. Yeah, we'll grab the Granite. The Poughkeepsie and Eastern. Well, there's no question. I want the AWS. Hey, look, they're all going to hand out. Everybody's going to get two. Perfect. Okay, the Boston and Lowell up here, he's been kind of cut off from everything near him except the Eastern Railway. He'll grab that so he gets a double blink. And that means the Hartford New Haven is going to have the Connecticut Valley. Now we come back around to him. He gets first shot at price. Connecticut Valley looks like it has some blasting costs possible to hook up. So what I'm going to do with that is I am going to set its price at 70. Top price. Put 140 bucks in it. I get 10 back. 25, 40. Goes down to this guy. And I may be making terrible decisions here. It might be much better to start it low or whatever, but there's not a lot that I can spend my cash on. And I have 280 bucks. The maximum I can spend my cash on is 2 companies at maximum value. I have enough money to do that. I feel like the game is being too friendly. If you look at the money handouts, where is it? 3 players, it's $400 each, but it's $280 for 4 or 5 players, which means, you know, it's not like in 1830 you get an amount of money divided by the number of players, basically, and that's generally the ratio that is there. So here, 5 players, everybody gets 2. 4 players, everybody would get 2. Yeah, it's not going to make much difference. So everybody's got enough money to start the companies wherever they like. It doesn't feel like price is that important a decision point. Maybe I'm mistaken. It's happened before. The Eastern and the Boston and Lowell. Boston and Lowell has some costs coming out right away. The Eastern has less. So I will take Boston and Lowell and put it at 70. Because again, unknown reason, the owner of the Poughkeepsie only put it at 60. I have no idea why I did that. I think I didn't see the 65. I'm good with that. That's the kind of flux that you see often in a first game that somebody's playing of an 18XX, where they put a bid down or whatever. They don't really know what they're doing. Here it's like, let's keep a few bucks. Maybe it'll mean something. It's not, but it might. I don't know. Okay, so here we are back. Trying to play 18 New England. What you missed, if you didn't watch it already, I'm loading up a failed start. But I'm going to leave the initial setup that I had in mind in play. And what I started with was, all right, let's get started with the BL. I'm going to play it out and try not to make all the mistakes I made last time. I've got the money in everybody's hands. Nobody has a hell of a lot of cash. Most of the companies don't have a hell of a lot of cash. Remember, the most that they can have is an extra 40 bucks. And that's for the ones that made it as high as they can. All right, so for the BL, what do we got here? And there's other things I screwed up too. For example, with the stickering, I noted that I missed the par values. I put them on those guys. There were extra colored pieces for everything, and they should be on white ones. And there's basically 1 extra disc of every color. Or I bought it used and somebody already stickered it, but I think I stickered this. I think it's my fault. Unfortunately, they only give you enough stickers for exactly what you need. So spare pieces, the only way they work for you is if there's a deformed wooden piece, which sometimes happens. Did I say that already? I did. I don't know if it was on this video sequence or the last one, or the blooper only. Okay, so the BL is set up here. It cannot lay track. Lowell would require a green upgrade, Boston would require a green upgrade, and all I can do is run between Boston and Wilmington. Until Lowell upgrades, Wilmington is a stop on my way. And that's one of the things I fucked up. So the Boston ends up running for 40 bucks. That's 20 and 20. We get some cash there, and nothing special happens. And I'm going to use one of these white tokens to just cover up the guys as I go, because I was getting confused as to who was going next. The Connecticut Valley. He is working with the Hartford and New Haven. Connecting this up. I want to get a town set up. There are only one type of city in this game, only the wide curves. You don't have the usual options that you have. So we lay here, and that gets us a 50 run, which is actually really good. This may be the biggest money piece. I thought we had some good big money pieces elsewhere. Really kind of don't, because there's doinkers and shit like that in your way everywhere. Okay. So that's 25 and 25. And again, there's nothing I can do. I'm nowhere near the cost of a 3 train. Let's hit the next one. The next one's the NYNH, which is running a deuce. Kind of has to go to Bridgeport. I'm working with the New London on the other side here, so I'm going to just try to get to New York. And that'll be a straight one of these. Although I have options. No, I don't. Okay. And this cost me nothing to build. So I run for 20 and 20. I think I explained my money situation sometime during the videos that got cut. I use a distribution of 1s, 5s, 25s, 100s, 500s. There's a lot of advantages to doing it that way. One of which is because there's only 4 25s and 100, and there aren't a lot of green chips in my set. You would kind of want to make the greens the bigger denomination usually, but you need a lot of hundreds to be able to make a big bank. That's all I have that's been taken out to make the bank exact amount. It works out very well. The greens don't get used up all that much, so I very seldomly run out of them. And it seems like the perfect denominations for me. You need lots of ones because people end up with spare bucks here and there, and they just add up, and everywhere's got like 3 or 4 bucks on it, and you just need them. Same thing with 5s. You end up with a lot of them, but you generally don't end up with all that many greens, and they're limited. You can only end up with 3 extras on any given place if you make your change all the time. On to the WNR. What's up with that? I'm working with the granite. Well, I don't want to just try to connect that up because, first of all, I want to make money. I'm only allowed to lay 1 track per turn. So that's my way to make money right away. Now, it would be great to hook up here and make more money, but I've got time to make it down to Providence. I've got some cash on board that I can make that, and I think it'll work okay from what I saw. So that's going to be 15 and 15, which generates a good amount. Sorry for camera movement, but there's nothing I can do about it. I've tried tripods and whatnot. NLN here is working with the Minnehaha. Nothing too interesting I can do. I come out of here. Do I want to go straight to New London? I mean, it's not optimal, but yeah. What does the NH Green track look like? Does that connect yet? No, it turns into sort of a New York City type of thing. But it will let me back down there. That's not great. Huh. I might actually be interested in going in a different direction this time. I had shot out this way because it seemed the obvious, but Hartford's worth more than Providence, and it might just be worth. Yeah, but do I want to spend money? I don't want to spend money. I want to get a bigger train quicker. I think I can always go down that way. Okay, fair enough. So we want one of these. I can't hit the same city twice in this game, even if they're separate cities on the same tile, unlike 1830. And that'll get me a 2020 run. I'm a 25. That's a pile of 5s. Okay. That puts it here. That gets me to the Phys Ed, which is the Poughkeepsie. Okay. Well, again, I don't have much choice. I want to avoid this $20 space. I was hitting it last time. Not with them necessarily, but so that gets me a 15 and 15. The granite. Okay, the granite's one of the special places. This Quinny here. What I'm allowed to play there is, let's find the special. It upgrades to a yellow city tile, Quincy. Salem upgrades to a yellow small city, by which they mean what I call towns. But this actually turns into a yellow city. There's only one type of yellow city. The granite is working with the Worcester. Do I want to go down here? Not terribly. I can't go off map though. I think what I decided was that actually I want to be able... So this turn I could collect for 20 and 20. But if I want to build my railway out, at any point I need this, which makes me 0. And I got to take the hit at some point or another. I might as well take it now at the first turn of the game. Otherwise, I could just run for 20 and 20 all game until I close it out, or maybe the Worcester builds me track. That would actually not be terrible, but I want the Worcester to make it down to Providence. I liked what that did when I saw it. Takes me to the Amazon Web Services here, who are working with, I think, the PE. Yeah. And I just want to curve down, and that'll get me a 20 and 20 for them as well. A couple of greens. I'm being careful with the coinage because I screwed up so much last time, and one of the things was I put money in the wrong place. That gets me to the... No, I shouldn't go there yet. To the ER. Ouch. So Salem gets to upgrade. There's only one thing I'm allowed to do. It has to be the 3 city. The only way it can be laid is like this. So I will run... Okay, so you'll notice I'm only laying 1 track for each thing. That was one of the things I fucked up. The minor companies only get to lay 1 yellow track per turn. It's only the majors that get to do others. And if you watch my blooper, you'll see why I was confused by that, honestly. So that's a 20 and 20 there. One of the problems with minors is that you do a couple of calculations and then you have two sets of cash to hand out at once. It's just a different mechanism. The mechanism for handing out the cash to the major corporations is always more complex, but it's more complex enough that I don't just, reach my paw in the till and make the change right away, which is part of, I think, what got me into trouble. Okay, and the Hartford New Haven, also working with the Connecticut Valley. Well, no choice, I gotta go up here. I might as well hit Hartford, given that I have a piece that allows me to. But I still only get the 20 and 20. That gets me to the end of the first operating round. There would be a merger round in between, but that only happens after somebody buys a 3 train, and we're quite a ways from that still. Which means we go to operating round 2. I'm going to pause here and play it out, but not go into all the details. One of the things that allows me to do is have 2 hands free, which makes it easier to not make mistakes, I think. An interesting choice with the Connecticut Valley. I ran the Boston and Lowell. It is just stuck, as before. It's in a good location, but it turns out both it and the ER feel rather crimped by the situation. What's the first Boston tile like? Does that bring everyone together? No, it doesn't. So, again, there's something of interest to how we end up doing, how we end up breaking out of there. We actually still have the advantage, although Portland is open to him eventually, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of weird. It depends on how the piece is laid, because it could go multiple ways. Okay. I was on the Connecticut Valley here, and that, I could spend $40 and cut my way down towards Springfield, Hartford. All that sounds good. But if I have two trains, I'd kind of like to be hitting here. And if I only have a 2 train, this is kind of as far as I could go. Now, another option would be to cut down this way, which might be the most appealing. I have to think about that. Because Hartford is worth a lot more than Greenville Field. It does cost me $40 instead of 20, though. I think we're going to do that. I think we're going to lay this way. But the key here is that I can run a train here, a 2 train here, and then a 3 train down here. Or maybe if I'm really lucky through Springfield, but we doubt that. Point of interest, WNR is running down to Providence. I really liked the way this run looks. It's going to cost me $20, but it starts making me better money. So I'd be making 25 and 25. I'd be making a $50 run instead of 15 and 15, a $30 run. Worth the investment. I think I make it up in time, but I screwed up the money. So I'm really not sure. Like, I moved $100 from his pocket into the treasury somehow. I've been chugging along happily, changed my battery too, which is pretty exciting. And I get to the GR, who really wants to go down to Providence. But there's a problem. I'm out of wide curved towns, and that ain't good. The game does allow an infinite number of these, but not of any other tiles, just the 3 plain, no town, yellow tracks. I don't know what that means for me. I could cut this way and hope to connect into the WNR at some point, but I think it's better to shift up towards Boston and Wilmington and everything like that instead. And that allows me to finally make money. I'm not going to make much. I only make 15 and 15, but eventually I get 2 more plays to get down here, and I start making 30 and 30 without any investment at all. So that's going to be the biggest cash cow of all. Early game. After running the AWS, heading down, I'm on the ER, and I know I'm coming back a lot. ER can spend $20 to hook up Portland. That's all my cash. I'm not going to be able to run it until I get a 3 train. Things may change when I have a 3 train. If I link this up, I'm blocked off. If I go up this way, well, I could go to New Hampshire or maybe curve into one of these. But I think my best move is to just sit there, just like this guy is, and collect up my 20 and 20 for Boston. And we've made it to the end without too much difference. The H&H went through Hartford, skipping Springfield, trying to hook up my CV over there. Give it a little hand. Okay. But again, they may not want to blast through this until they can get a 3 train. It's hard to tell. Because they're kind of locked in with the track they have. So they might get an extra turn of track lay by doing it that way. And another MR that we skip, we get to the stock round. And what happens? Well, there is nothing anybody can do. Because all the miners have been accounted for. Until the 3 train comes out, there will not be any more miners. Until the 3 train comes out, I can't change the yellow track tiles that are in play, etc. Without any miners, I think it's when the 3 train comes out that I'm allowed to start doing mergers as well. Am I right about that? I hope so. find a place to put the rules. And this is not a big XX, it's just forming a minor company. No, forming a major. C12. I swear I was here. Wow, it's late in the round. Okay. Yeah, it's phase 3 when the mergers start happening. And they happen between the operating rounds rather than as part of the stock round and whatever. The player who forms the merger can invest a big shitload of money and buy themselves a 60% share in the company right away if they do a conversion. If they do a merger, I'm not sure if they still get to. I think it's in either case, right? Let's see. Yeah. So you can throw a big influx of cash into your company, and more importantly, in some ways, you can invest you can invest some of your money. And the only way you get to do it, like first, whatever so if you're doing it in this merger, it's a little less valuable because you'll have cash to place. But whoever can get their merger first is going to be able to have shares of something quicker than anyone else. And that something is going to have a train, it's going to have cash, obviously. They always have cash. But it's going to have a train, it's going to have lots of track built and everything because it's coming out of a miner. It's not just a starting corporation the way most XXs allow most of their corporations to start. So it's an interesting situation, but instead we're going to run to the operating round. I'm going to run through another couple operating rounds, get to the point that I was at where, get beyond the point where I was at where I quit before. But we're moving along a lot faster. If you wanted to see more details and more fucking up, go look at the bloopers. A few more plays. The WNR paid its $20 to get into Providence. There's a cost under there. I'm not paying that. And that gets me a 50 run, which means I make 25 and 25, and I start rolling in the money. And I'm expecting the GR to do the same kind of thing. So not only have I gotten synergy here, but I've gotten a kind of similarity to my companies. That may not be wise. Quite often in 18xx games, it's not a good idea to be the guy who has, too many 3 trains or whatever. It's always okay to have too many of the first permanent train. Kipsy sprung the money to cut across here. They're going to have to spend another 20 to hook up New York, but once they do, they're making 60 and they're making 30 and 30, which is a pretty good run. It's as good as the Cape Cod run that the GR is going to get. So someone else is going to make some nice money. It's going to take them a while, but it's, they're going to be a little slower than the GR. That's all. And that was the PE. Speaking of the GR, we know precisely what they're doing. And that's at 15 and 15. And I got to swap batteries. OR1, this is the third operating round really, is done. And we see the biggest money is sitting on the Boston and the Lowell at 100. It's just, generating a normal amount and no outspending. Some decent tracks being laid. Cash for the players. Got about 160 here. That looks like the biggest. Again, he's running 2 companies that can't do much, but are making decent money both from the early point. They might end up winning the race compared to like the Worcester and the Granite and whatever the other one that was getting itself a good run, the CV up here. But I had to put some outlays, so we'll see. It's a race for who can get the 3 train. Very, very clearly, the Boston and the Lowell doesn't really want to be the first guy to get the 3 train. So, like, this money is not necessarily advantageous to me. But, I mean, I will be the first guy if I have to, right? It's just, I would rather someone else did it so I get my track lay and then get to start running more trains more quickly. But if I'm the first guy who does it, that's fine. That's gonna, I did the H and H. That's gonna put us over here and back over here, and we start all over again. So, a lack of the wide curved doinkers means the NYNH is cutting across to here. If they want to spend 20 bucks, they can deny the Poughkeepsie entry into New York City. For now. I mean, eventually they get in, of course, but it might be a worthwhile thing. It might not. Did I have to pay for any of this? I didn't have to pay for any of it. So it comes to a question of, is it worth me funding some cash to get the first lay here when he's definitely going to pay it, right? Or do I just say, you know what? My run's here, I'm not making it down there anytime. Anytime. There's no 3 train of mine that makes it from New Haven down to New York. I built that track just to have a connection for my eventual major company. So, there is that. And yeah, so I don't know. But Poughkeepsie just went. They're placing, getting into position in case the NYNH doesn't screw them over. At the end of the 4th operating round, 2nd operating round there. And we're still not, it still doesn't feel like we're anywhere near those 4 trains, right? What do we got? Well, we got a couple people at 200 bucks. Makes sense. A lot of the track's been laid and the companies can't do anything more. Like the CV can lay one more piece here. The NLN can lay probably a piece here unless they want to sweep around again, which would be pretty silly given that they went out of their way to go up that way. GR's got a couple of pieces it can lay, but there really isn't much opportunity left for anybody to do anything to change anything. It's just going to generate money. Now, one thing that's important is companies that have hooked up. So the PE AWS, they can merge rather than have to pay cash. That allows me to invest more money initially in one of these, and possibly invest money in one of the remaining miners that's out there. So making any XX game, making a lot of cash in your pocket is just good, right? I'm not sure I believe in the high capitalization snowballing theory that the designer puts forward as being all that powerful. But again, that may be the games that I've played, right? 1830, there are ways of capitalizing crappy little companies early on, making shit tons of money in them, and then turning that into your big capitalization company, right? Eventually you want to throw a lot of cash in your company. There's no question of that. Eventually you want your company to be flush with cash and it doesn't hurt you at all. In this game, it seems like there's some design incentive against that, but I'm not even sure it really works. Like, it doesn't hurt you to have extra cash. You can shift trains around, do weird shit, whatever. There's only 5 players, and there's, 8 companies. So there are going to be players who or corporations. There are going to be players who have multiple of the bigger companies. No matter what, it's the same situation as 1830 in 5 players. So yeah, stock round, still nothing to do. Like I said, we got somebody with 200 bucks. We don't have any cash on anybody of any significance for the We're not close. We're We're at like $100 on companies. They may be able to do something in this MR. Is it the MR? Yeah, they might be able to do something in this OR that'll trip the threes, but it's not going to happen in the first OR. I need to play some Raid, so I'm going to pause here. I've gotten to beyond the point that I quit the last time. Everything's going smoothly. I learned my lessons. I'm being more careful, and yeah, it's early Thursday morning. My light is buzzing. It does that sometimes. I don't know if it means anything. Those are relatively easy to replace. The big bar fluorescents, I'm sure I can order them, and I probably should get around to it, but everything in my life is difficult to do. Anyway, it's a pleasant like 70 degrees here at like 2 in the morning on Thursday. But what I was thinking was, you know, the stock rounds, sometimes those early stock rounds in a game, especially like 1830, can be really, really important. It might not seem that big a deal, but timing when you dump your company, timing when you get rid of shares because somebody else might dump their company, stuff like that is also very important, and none of that is here. We might see that there's timing issues that emerge due to the choice of when to make the mergers and whatnot. But I was just thinking, you know, he's really cut away with this design much of the stuff that I'm kind of used to as being some of the more exciting aspects of a game of 18xx. Quite often it's the very early game that's very interesting. And here, it feels like the very early game is really perhaps uninteresting. Anyway, we're going to push into the next operating round and run through the companies again. I'll come back if something exciting happens, or maybe if I just have thoughts. The hookup to Hartford having been made. I don't know if I caught this before, if I maybe missed it, but he's making a 30 and 30 run now, which is some hefty money coming in. At the end of that race or run, I think the most money is in the Boston and Lowell, actually, with its little run, consistent and whatever. A lot of starting money, 125, 140 bucks. But I'm only going to get 20 more next time, so I don't get a lot of speed. Close behind, the Connecticut Valley is getting 130. That means that they're going to be up to 160. They're not going to cut it this next time. And nobody's above that. We got another 130 for the Minnehaha, but again, like the Boston, it's, you know, just steadily making money. Everybody's got at least $100 on their company treasury except for the Poughkeepsie, but the Poughkeepsie, which has done a lot of blasting, is hooked up to one of them $60 runs, 30-30s. So it should start making money. You know, everybody's kind of caught up at the same time. Now, obviously, look, the best in terms of starting money is, well, there were other $50 runs right off, weren't there? Yeah. The CD was a 50. But another very good starting run is the New York Central here. Actually, no, this is the New York Western or something like that. I don't know. I'm not sure that all of these are real railways, to tell you the truth. Some of them I know are, but yeah. I'm assuming they were all at least on paper. So on this second operating round in this cycle, I don't think we're going to see a merger here either, but I think we're going to see them at the next cycle. What I've been doing, I'm not sure this game has a requirement. Phases are not listed here fully. I'm going to have to look this up. As I've been pushing through, companies are allowed to buy trains from one another. Now normally, in an 18xx game, it's not until the 3 train comes out that you're allowed to do that. And I don't recall whether or not, like, I don't recall seeing that in this one. So I'm going to look. I don't see a limitation here. And I don't see any indication here. I believe that I have been leaving a tool out of sight, simply out of habit, because I don't know of any XX game where you can buy your two trains off of each other right at the beginning of the game. Usually that's a big no-no, because it allows a little too much shakeup. I'm not going to go back and change anything, but right now I'm on the New London Northern, and I got to think about him. Hey, maybe I want to buy the NYNH's train. Well, NYNH isn't going yet. It's going to be getting... I expect the change to break before. I don't want to engineer it, because what it means is I get no income from a company because of that. Now, in some cases, it might not have been too terrible. For example, the CV having two trains is almost ideal for them. So, there is that. And they had a shit ton of money. They could have easily shifted over a fair amount of it. They'd still collect up quickly enough to probably buy themselves another train fairly early if I don't want to create a corporation out of them. And then there'd be enough money for the Hartford New Haven to have been able to buy something. But the next company up is actually in a position to do this, with two companies, neither of which have run yet. Do I want to do it? Maybe. The Poughkeepsie does have the capability to run two trains. The AWS does not. And I feel like I'm kind of falling behind. Looking at player money, I'm kind of in with the pack for the most part. Right now, these guys are well ahead. They've just been generating personal cash relatively quickly. So, you know, maybe I had to do blasting money and whatnot, which is why the companies aren't all that rich. Although it's not that big a difference. We're looking at $260 here to $300, right? Assuming I had paid $100 out of pocket for each, I had some extra money on the CV, whatever. You can kind of get an idea of what we're looking at here. This was bare bones. So obviously I spent some money. But yeah, I might want to shake things up. Now, shaking things up may just make things better for other people is the problem. The AWS goes fairly late with the Eastern. Would be able to break out in Boston, and the HNH able to upgrade New Haven. So that would make them money right away. Whereas I'd be foregoing my cash from this. The train wouldn't run for him because you buy trains after everything else as usual. The extra train. I don't know. I think it's better to just be patient with them, but yeah, it's definitely a feature that I have ignored, and I could see I should have been thinking along those lines instead of just running my little miners as their own thing, thinking I have to get the first three train out for anything interesting to happen. That's not the case. Which means the game is a lot more, has the capacity for much more chaos than I've seen at the beginning. I've seen sort of a very stately progression of all these companies. Having second thoughts, I just ran the Poughkeepsie, and the reason I'm having second thoughts is, first of all, I'm just set up for it. But secondly, it's going to take me forever. even with upgrades and whatnot, it's going to take me forever to start making money. So then the question becomes, how much do I want to pay for a 2-train? Obviously, I've got to pay at least $70 for the AWS to be able to buy anything. Probably don't want to pay $100, but I don't know. It's worth $100. It's very easy to pay $90, so I'll do that. And I'll grab a second train. And that means when the AWS goes, it's not going to get a run at all. And therefore, I forego some income. But it's not big income. It's 20 and 20. That 3-train is not terribly useful to the AWS until they lay more track. But what we're hoping is that more track allows me to run a more interesting 3-train. Right now, the 3-train would run between these three, which doesn't add much at all. But I'm assuming the upgrades and whatnot are going to be able to get me something like Syracuse to Albany to Hudson or something along those lines. The big event has happened. Let's take a look at what all the official changes that happen here. Yellow and green is available. Red off-board areas are worth more now or different. Minor companies can merge or convert. Majors can own no more than 4 trains. One thing is, I may not even want to merge these guys. I'm allowed to now. That's one thing. I created something that I'm allowed to merge, but I'm not the highest valued company player. Now, it's a weird balance because all my money's not invested, which means that merging or upgrading, I don't remember what it's actually called. The conversion to a major company. By not doing either, I may be, I'm leaving this money unproductive. But on the other hand, I'm sitting on 50% of 2 pretty decent runners, right? Like if I merge them, I'm getting the same company with 20% plus whatever I buy. Of course, I get stock valuation and whatnot as well, so there's that. But it's kind of an interesting balance as to, do you want to do that 50-50 split of cash? You're going to make more cash by far by running your companies until you have enough money to invest that makes up for the difference. Where owning stocks is important. And if somebody else merges, well, then I can invest my money in theirs and make money off of that and keep the bonus of having 2 miners. With the dams busted open, we have a couple of big upgrades, a little bit more money being made. Here we're running a 60 run, here we're running a 50 run for those last couple of companies. That puts us to the merger round. Now, nobody did anything funky with their trains. He broke it open. That's good enough, right? That's the big thing is like, yeah, it might be worth playing around. It's hard to tell. So who could have done it? Well, the Granite could have thrown more money into here, but this is really close, right? This was at 140 already. I'd rather not lose a run. I don't know. And the same kind of situation with some of the other companies. The ER is a long way from getting a train, but he's very close to getting another train. And then I can just buy the extra 2 train if I so desire, or keep things running, or merge, or whatever I want to do. That gets us to the merger phase. I'm not sure what I want to do there. One thing I want to point out is the fact that I didn't know that I could have combined for a train, that might have made a difference for some of the bigger earners. Some of the bigger earners who had a lot of money on one of their companies could have pulled things off. This guy really couldn't have done it much earlier than he did. Some of them might have been able to do it a couple operating rounds earlier, but They're the big earners. They're winning. There's no need to shake things up. This guy has a desire to shake the situation up. There's no question of that. He didn't want to persist in making relatively low income for the rest, for the next couple of rounds. So I think it's not an unreasonable choice as to how it worked out. Let me think about mergers. Now, you do this in order, so the BL would be the first, mergers and, a replacement. I don't know what the actual official term in the game is. So the BL and the ER are in the same spot. That gives them the opportunity to merge, as opposed to actually whatever that other term is. What do they call it? They're not telling me there. And now it's fucking red text. Conversion. Okay. Sure. So if I want to convert, the par value is going to be $100. If I wanted to merge, yeah, they'd be, I was thinking, wait, it can't be the average. They would be sitting at a par of 120. Which means I could buy a couple more shares. I would get 2 shares for all of this, and I could buy a couple more. These are hard choices, and I haven't really thought about them all that much. Let's just do some math in our head and see what we come up with. Merging these would come to 120. I'd lose all my income from both of them. 120 bucks means I could buy 2 more shares. So I would have 40% of the combined company, which means I'd make a little bit less money, but I'd be gaining stock value. That doesn't sound terrible. If I convert, I would turn this would end up with a valuation of 140, which is what I paid for it, right? But I'd have to par it at 100, which means it would the presidency would have a 200 valuation. So I'd spend 60 bucks there, and I'd have enough to buy 2 more shares. It would be a less valuable company. It would have a lower par, which means it collects less cash in it. Do I have a lot I want to use money for? Well, I got trains. Other than trains, not really. So it's kind of hard to tell just how much I need to put into the company. I'm really torn on it because, look, I would be owning, again, 40%. I think I'm better off not merging. I think I'm better off holding a minor. Even though I'm set up to do a merger, I'm just not convinced it's that great an idea. Especially since it means I lose a dot. Is the BL the one I want to do this to? Or is the slightly poorer Eastern a better choice? I think the Eastern is a better choice, so I'm going to pass on the BL and do nothing. I'll make the same kind of calculation with the other railways as I go. So I've got something similar set up with the CV and the HNH, which is, look, I could merge them. Mergers look like a really questionable choice to me, though. Questionable at this moment. It's a tool I might want to use later on. Remember, there comes a point where the trains start getting big and your miners may not be able to afford one of those big trains. And they don't have many dots and whatnot. And there are only 8 major companies while there's 15 miners. So to some extent or another, it may behoove you to get rid of, to crash miners into each other. As opposed to being able to, the idea of forming a higher capitalized company in a game where the designer basically said, I wanted to get away from like the highest capitalized company just being able to win across the board, which I still don't agree happens at all. Like, I've noticed people who win 1830 generally didn't start their first company very high. Generally. Well, depends. If you're left holding the B&O, you might. But yeah, it's an interesting problem. But there's certainly reasons you'd want to merge to get rid of the miners. There's also sort of the question of, is the miner really worth it? Again, if somebody else starts a corporation, maybe it's worth more to wait a little bit at least and make your bigger money off of a combination of shares of their stock and your own investment. But again, if other people are investing in your company, what's that going to do? Well, not much, honestly, because as far as I can tell, you can't defend your IPO. Your IPO shares can be purchased. You don't have to release them. Right? Let me look at buying stock. From the company or the bank pool to their own holdings. So basically, other players can force you to release stuff into the IPO, which feels a little weird again. It's like, you made this whole mechanism around, like, you can release shares anytime you like and whatever. It almost feels like there should be a game where only the president should be able to buy directly from the IPO, or at his agreement, essentially. But it doesn't actually work that way. Those are available. The company just hasn't gone about selling them to the public as vigorously. But anybody could ask for them and get them. There's something very weird about the mechanisms of this. I like the way the IPO, hints at working, but the game doesn't actually take that up and try that. That would have been a really intriguing concept if, in fact, unlike 1870, in 1870, when a company redeems shares, they're not available to anyone. The company re-releases them and makes them available through the bank pool again. So unlike that, the companies just can't hold shares. Like, they're holding shares, but they don't really do much. And I think you want to release your IPO as much as possible for the opportunity to redeem the shares and start making share value on them. Of course, nobody gets any arbitrage, but the point is the corporations don't end up getting screwed by getting paid IPO values for shares that, like, they don't really want to sell. Geez, I don't know. Yeah. Reason to float a company by whatever mechanisms you want to do is if you don't have a lot of cash on hand. If you're falling behind or whatever, it gives you a chance to infuse your company with a lot of cash so it can buy that 3 train or whatever and then start making you more money. I don't feel like that's the case with the Lowell, the B&L, the Eastern maybe. I'm looking at Connecticut Valley, same thing. Certainly with all things in mind, I would rather hold off. I can merge a more valuable company with a cheaper one on the cheaper one's option to do so here. So I'll hold my decision making, right? I get to choose last. If nobody's done anything, Maybe I want to start this, which doesn't have a lot of capital. Maybe I want to merge them. I doubt that. There's advantages though for me because of this line, maybe, to having that. Well, this token sucks. That's the problem. That's the real problem. I just don't want that token. The CV's doing great, but it's not something that like is really all that appealing, except it's kind of cool. And well, it's kind of cool in a way because it cut down this way and that way or whatever, come across, whatever it does, and be able to hit this, which is not a bad space twice. It's not a fantastic space. It's not New York, but I'm not going to be New York. Whereas the H&H could focus more on getting to New York. So I think I definitely don't want to merge them. I know that. Aha. This isn't the Minnehaha. This is the New York and New Haven. There's the New York, New Haven, and Hartford. That's the actual Minnehaha. But given that he's facing the wrong way, oops. I'm actually thinking about building the NYNH&H out of the New London. So far, everybody's passed. I've already passed on the NYNH. But you feel... So merging, I wouldn't have to pay any money, but... And how much would I get? If I actually merge, which is a thought, I'd be at 125. That would put me at 120 a share. I could still only buy 2 shares, so I'd have 40%. I can get 40% of the New London, because it would also be at 120. I would have to throw in more money. I would have to throw in $80, which leaves me with 20 there. But oh no, I wouldn't have enough. Do I want to fucking merge these two? Neither one's going to make... So, the New London is not going to make a train on its next operating round. Period. But the New York and New Haven is close. Which means, yeah, I could juggle trains or whatever. Do I want to just reverse what I've been saying and go for that stupid merger thing? Because that would get me 40%. The New London, I would only get 30% of it at a higher par value. With people sitting with like $300 who might just snarf it up. Damn it. And I can't keep... See, here's the thing. I can't keep both dots. Of course, I could convert this over and then I'd make an additional run there, but that's no good. I think I'm just going to convert the New London and keep the NYNH on its own. I think. And we'll open up the New York, New Haven, and Hartford. So, to do this, we take the President's certificate. We find we put down the camera. Company charter. And by the way, you know, I had said there's some places where the rules are kind of ambiguous and I lean in favor of, you know, whatever the actual, you know, whatever the sort of the standard in 18xx is. The case of the trains, you know, the case of the game not mentioning that you can buy trains as early as the 2 train off different miner companies. That's very, very weird, but I don't think the rules are at all ambiguous about it. They don't say anything about it. And they would if they, if they could. So I'm not just favoring that. Let's take a look at what the merger rules say and how we do this. We get a par value marker. Where do we put these? Okay. We get a par value marker, which is going to be at 100. Really low. We trade the miner company value plus cash. The miner company's worth 120. I got to spend 80 bucks. So I get 20 back, which gets me a 25. But now there's 200 in the treasury. This is, again, this conversion is very different from, say, how you'd see conversions happen in, say, 2038 or other games that have miners that just directly convert rather than merging into something. In those cases, usually what happens is you just do something and the miner turns into it. Here, you're actually issuing shares and whatnot. You're turning it into a public company, and it's got to pile more money, and all kind of interesting stuff is happening. So there's reasons to do it beyond what you normally see, which is why I think it's more attractive than the normal conversion of miners. We do all kind of stuff. We replace the station marker. There we go. We're going to have 2 extra station markers here. We get one of these. We get a stock value marker. This should have been one of the white things. I don't think it's that big a deal that it's not. Although, again, it would have segmented stuff more. This thing flips over and is no longer a thing. This ting is no longer a ting. I grab these shares and I guess I put them in the treasury. And now I'm able to buy additional at $100 each. That is only 1, but I will buy it. That turns from being let's try doing it this way this time. That goes from being an IPO share to something else. I haven't used up all my money. I'm only holding 30% of the company. And I'm going to hand him 30% if he wants it. Fuck. Wow. I don't like that. These go here. Although this feels like a stock action, it's not. The train, of course, goes over. And I think that's all she wrote. I think this was an unwise move simply because of him sitting there with so much money. But we made our decision and we'll go with it. And I'll put these here and figure them out later. Yeah. And that's going to put me up to the Poughkeepsie. Well, the interesting thing here is now there's something I could spend my money on. I'm kind of set up nicely. I'm not going to do anything. I already did the work to get the first 3 trade out. I want to reap some of the benefits from it. All right, let me think about the granite. What the granite is, he really wants another train. Now, I could have juggled trains, And I could have done that back when I ran, and it probably would have been a wise idea. I can't merge these two, they're not connected yet. Do I want to do this too? Yeah, good question. Because I'm making a nice run of 30 and 30, but I'm sitting here with I could make significantly more. Now the problem is, of course, I owe 90 bucks. 75, 85, 90. That would be this. I would actually be able to buy a fourth share. So I'm going to go for it as well. Another thought to have, as I started speaking before I turned on the camera. If I buy shares of someone else's stuff, buy a couple here, and that's what I'm considering right now. The Albany chose not to. He's in good shape as far as he's concerned. He wants to keep his two companies. Again, he took the hit, as far as I'm concerned, by shifting and losing a turn of income. If I take shares of someone else's corporations, I end up throwing more cash into those corporations. That allows them to buy more trains, speed up the action, not necessarily, because if I start my own corporation, I'm going to be buying those trains instead. But more of those early trains are in their hands. And there's two ways to look at that. But one of them is they can make good early money on the shares that they're buying, that they hold. Money that they wouldn't necessarily be able to make. Now, I look at this Boston and Albany here. I'm like, well, yeah, he's going to be able to make pretty decent money off that. But the ER can also make decent money, and it's kind of restricted. I think I'm going to convert that one as well. But I'm not going to merge the Boston and Lowell for the simple reason that, again, I want to maintain a company. What is my cost for this? Oh, do I lose my company? That's the problem. Because I got to pay $100 for the privilege here. Ooh, that's nasty. Oh. If I merge them, the share value will be 120 each. I can buy 40% of the two companies. I lose a token out of that. I think I'm going to hold off making a decision. I don't really like it, but I don't want to be in the position where I'm going to lose my company. But doing it in the first merger round means I get another operating round. I make some income. That might help me protect my company in a way that I can't right now. So I think I'll hold there. And that puts me on the last of the companies. And does he want to? I don't know. Let me think. I don't make any decisions. There's something else that irks me about the game. So I had to create the Boston and Albany here. This is because I'm looking at the different company names and having a hard time coming up with one that fits the track that's there. This at least is near Boston and is heading west, so sure. The random setup of the miners and the particular corporations chosen and whatnot, for good reason. These are largely bigger things, I guess. I don't know. But I try to look at them and I'm like, well, what's the closest? What would work? So like the B&M might be going up here, fine. I don't want to take that over. So the only Boston one that I could take. The others, I mean, this is not the Canadian National. That's pretty obvious. It's not the New York Central. Providence and Worcester, that looks like it's the W&R's province. So I don't want to steal their name, even though maybe I'm kind of closer to that than anything else. Central Vermont, I'm not anywhere near Vermont. I'm in Massachusetts here. This looks like it's going to be central Vermont, but I was thinking that would be the Canadian National or something. And it's certainly not the Delaware and Hudson. And what that, means to me is that, like, you're going to be forced to name your railways at some point or another, things that just don't belong when you create a corporation. And I mean, sometimes that's okay, but it feels like it's not something that bothers me in the way that, like, the historical, the accurate economic model failing bothers me. But it bothers me in this sort of, like, little OCD sort of fashion. And I think other people would be even more bothered by it. Anyway, back to trying to think about the final railway. It's the final railway. Their decision. Because, I got all this money. I got to invest it in the in the Minnehaha. I absolutely have to, because I have to put myself in a position where I can take it over. Enter into the first stock round that matters. All the miners become available. This is something I had to look up. I was pretty sure this was the case. I look up over here on phase 3, and nope, nothing listed. But I don't see it anywhere else. It is, however, I didn't really look that hard everywhere else, but which is over here in this red text. At the beginning of the game, 10 companies are available from phase 3. The other 5 miners become available. It would have been really wise to put this here. I could see people very easily not remembering to put them out there. So now there's tons of options out there. You don't necessarily have to invest in another company, in another corporation. You can invest in another miner company. And I got the whale, so I get to choose first. If you start your par at 80, even right now, you don't have the money for the 3 train. Now, you might do it just to do a merger opportunity. You might also do it in order to throw a few extra bucks in. But that par of 80 right now is going to cost you 90 a share. So just something to keep in mind. So the fact that I have like 240 and could buy a third share of something if there was anything that cheap, prices aren't that low, is out of the question. But I do have enough money for another company, and I think that sounds appealing. I kind of like the idea of lots of little companies for some stupid reason. One I like most is the New York, Westchester, and Boston. It makes an immediate $70 run. I'm not going to be able to beat that. There's not another token here. Things might get ugly, because you can see some of these are covered up. The home is listed on each one, so you can try to figure out, like, where is the BP? Boston and Providence is in Providence. That's down here. Okay. That's not unappealing either. Might I have wanted that? No. I'm closer to my own rails by taking this. I like that. That gives me more opportunity for mergers. Got here with the Boston and Albany. I got no money, man. Can't do anything. Essentially same issue here. Can't do anything. The fact that these were coming in and going to be available might have been a disincentive to either of those players towards forming their company. But we'll go with what we got. That brings us to this dude. And this dude has made his mind up what he wants to do. He wants to own 30% of the Minnehaha. Why? I don't know. It's not going to make that much money. Is it that wise? What if I owned 30% instead? Let's put the money into the Boston and Albany, which I believe is going to make more money. than the Minnehaha, right? See, this is set up in a stupid location. Hartford, maybe I can get to. I'll just buy one of these. I might just end up as an investor instead of trying to take out a company, even if that was my initial plan. And you know what? I'm not in a position where I could take somebody out. I probably should have made a company out of this. Oh well, I might, give me my $100 back. Give me my 100 back. I might start another railway. Like I said, the Boston is interesting. I'm running here, so that CR would be intriguing, but location-wise, and Fitchburg might be interesting, but I just don't think that they make the same revenue. So instead, I think I'm going to buy myself a third miner as well. Last guy who has big piles of cash left. Now, see, I had the ordering mixed up. I forgot I go counterclockwise rather than clockwise, which is weird. You would think, again, it's been a while since I played an XX, but you would think I would be used to that. But I don't know, man. This guy's in a better position to buy the Boston and Albany's. But I could get 10%, I could get 20% of $30. No, of $60. So I could get like $12 a run off that. Whereas with something else, I'm splitting it 50-50 for my money. I might as well go with the something else, I think. I'd be opening at 90. Some of these may not get opened simply because they're as the price point starts getting, as the price of the train starts getting too high, the difference becomes too big. For example, he might have wanted to open at 90 instead of at 100, because that would have left him a little bit more cash, but not enough to buy something. So he's got $100. He can buy a share of one of these corporations. Thinking here may be the opposite of what the designer's intention is, right? He's talking about, well, the biggest capitalized companies do the best. Well, I went for, let's capitalize this as much as possible in case I need to do anything, right? I need $20 for Providence. That's my 180 plus 20, right? That extra $20 seems more useful in my minor company than it does just kicking around doing nothing for me. I kind of believe that, and we saw it here, people capitalized as high as they possibly could. I think that makes sense because you're just going to end up, that money's not going to do anything for a while. But this money, that extra $20 could be important very soon, right? Like, I'm putting actual money in, but I always try to float things as high a value as I can when it's corporations. With miners, I don't try to put as much money as possible into the miner, because in the games where you're putting too much money in, you're not really getting more value for that. You're just getting some extra cash in the miner. 1835 and 2038, the miners in those, sometimes you want a few extra bucks in there more than the start value or whatever. So you are allowed to actually pay too much for them, I think. I'm not sure in 35. 2038 you certainly are, because you're allowed to bid on them. But yeah, I think you may be stuck with the exact amount of money you put in 1835, which kind of sucks, because it would be nice to be able to have a little bit more flexibility, build, do a little bit more blasting or whatever. So where am I stuck? I'm stuck with him. What does he do? I don't know, man. Back to what I was thinking. This is, I got sidetracked because I had to replace my battery. Let's look at the valuations of these companies. The CR is going to run for like 15 and 15. The Fitchburg, same kind of world, at least to start with. Now, it can go up. I could put 20 bucks more in and get, you know, get it up to, I guess, 20 and 20. These guys make me 12. just as a, and are more disposable. They're much more liquid, which is something to think about. The last one left is the Hudson, which starts up in Albany. Now, Albany is really far from my railways. I'm not going to be able to merge it into anything, but it does make more money. And I think, and has some capability of synergizing when this builds that track. It's not going to cost me anything. I think I'm going to just pick that up for 180. That swings us through these guys with no money left anymore. Back to him. He's got 100 bucks. I like the Boston and Albany better, so I'll buy one of its shares. Again, those make me like $6 each, you know, but it's all right. And he will do the same, putting shit tons of money into that little company. We come back, he passes again. Everybody's going to pass around. The whale's going to end up staying here. We're going to move to the first operating round. And I am going to go play Raid. I put this here to remind me. But yeah, that gets us through what I think is the early part of the game, right? We had the all miners period, and then we ended up making it through enough to where some corporations are floating, just a couple. People are getting more miners. The green track's available, only a couple on the board. But the game's going to blossom a lot more at this point. What seemed very static before, I think we're going to start seeing something that looks a lot more like XX as we're used to, although players are still mainly invested in their miners. The two remaining miners kind of suck. The Connecticut River and the Fitchburg. And oh boy, those tiles are gonna get improved, and I'm gonna have no fucking clue where they are. Unlike Albany, which I have an idea where it is, and it was covered, and the others, I would have an idea where they are. They're kind of more important cities. What is the Connecticut River at? Springfield, Connecticut. Yeah. But it's a name I recognize. I don't know that it's just north of Hartford. And these don't have a letter or anything, so that's going to be kind of troubling. But, you know, it is what it is. Why are there only two left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. There are 15 companies and 16 spaces. One of them will probably be picked up just because they are a decent investment, even if they're a crappy one. Yeah, even if it's a crappy miner, it's still not a bad investment, I think. But the last one gets a lot more questionable because you're going to have to throw in some extra bucks in order to buy a train. And the more it starts looking uninteresting, the more it gets you to, like, the more likely you're going to be on the 4 train when it comes up, and it's just not going to show up. I had been thinking, well, maybe it would be worth buying one in order to merge it. But you have to get through that first operating round. And if you don't have a train at the end of that first operating round, the company just vaporizes. Now, there are other options. You could buy a shitty train for it off of another company and keep it alive long enough to make the merger or whatever. And there are definite advantages. Like, I can see definite advantages to using one of these to either create a public corporation, but more likely to merge to a corporation, to merge to one of your other privates. But also, the WNR is the only one with Fitchburg available to it. The Connecticut isn't connected yet. But, okay, I'm sorry, the Connecticut is not connected yet because it's Connecticut. Yeah, never mind. It seemed like it was going to be funnier. All right, yeah, I'm gonna plug this thing in and for charging and go play me some Raid.